On the morning of June 3rd, 1998, a German family was enjoying their train ride while drinking coffee. This high-speed train was traveling from Munich to Hamburg, and it was 10:30 a.m., with everything completely normal so far. But exactly 12 minutes later, the family was absolutely terrified when suddenly a piece of steel tore through the floor, coming right up from under their feet, straight between their seats. This was just the beginning of the deadliest accident in the history of German high-speed trains. In the late 1950s, Japan surprised the entire world when their Shinkansen or bullet train became the first high-speed train. This train connected cities across the entire country, making travel so incredibly fast that hours-long journeys were reduced to mere minutes of travel time. Following Japan's lead, France and Italy also built their high-speed train infrastructure, and of course Germany was not left behind. Germany started its own high-speed train project named ICE, which stands for Intercity Express. When these trains were introduced to the public in the 1980s, the world really thought this was the ultimate future of trains, as they included everything a person could possibly imagine, from aerodynamic design to the use of modern computers, and an exceptionally comfortable ride for all passengers. Everything seemed perfect, but every perfect system always has a hidden weakness, and the fatal weakness of the ICE trains was their wheels. Initially, the wheels of the ICE Generation 1 trains were built using a monoblock design, meaning the entire wheel was made from a single, solid piece of steel, which was very strong and cheap and highly reliable. However, a serious problem was noticed with this monoblock wheel when a few years later, passengers started complaining that whenever the train ran at high speeds, there was a strange vibration. In the buffet car where food was served, the glasses and spoons and forks resting there would start making noise. These vibrations and noises were making the journey quite unpleasant, and eventually, when engineers checked, the problem was found inside the wheels. The monoblock wheels were indeed made in one solid piece, and they were perfectly equally balanced on all sides, but if even a tiny weight of just a fraction of an ounce was added to one side at high RPMs, this extra weight difference would cause the wheel to vibrate, and that is exactly what was happening on these trains. Due to running at high speeds, friction had unevenly worn down some sides of the monoblock wheels, throwing off their perfect balance. It was not noticeable at slow speeds, but when this unbalanced wheel spun at 155 miles per hour, a heavy vibration would spread through the entire train. This is a common problem with any wheel, as even in car tires, if two puncture patches are applied on one side, the weight increases by just a tiny fraction of an ounce, which can cause heavy vibrations at high speeds. To fix this wheel, balancing is done, and a technician adds an equal amount of weight to the opposite side to perfectly balance the wheel once again. But balancing the countless wheels of a train can be a very difficult task, especially if they are made in one single piece, and replacing the wheels completely was not only difficult, but also incredibly expensive, costing thousands of dollars. Therefore, German engineers came up with a new solution to finally fix this issue with the ICE trains, and that was the introduction of resilient wheels. The special thing about resilient wheels was that they were not in one piece, as the inner ring was separate and the outer ring was a separate piece, and between these two, a rubber ring was inserted to absorb the vibrations. This design was specifically adopted so that whenever the outer wheel wore out, only that specific part would be replaced. At that time, this design was also being used in Germany's trams. But the problem was, the trams only ran at 18 miles per hour, while the ICE trains had to run at 155 miles per hour. This was a massive issue, the critical details of which you will learn about further on in this story. But at that time, nobody really paid any attention to it. Executives approved the resilient wheel design without any testing, and then in 1992, these new wheels were installed on all high-speed trains. Everything ran smoothly for a few years. But in 1997, Hanover's tram company, Uestra, discovered something truly shocking when they noticed some deep cracks in the wheels of their trams. They replaced their cracked wheel parts, and as a precaution, informed Deutsche Bahn, which was Germany's national railway company, but because there were no complaints of vibrations in the ICE trains at that time, Deutsche Bahn completely ignored this critical warning. And then exactly 1 year later, on June 3rd, 1998, everything changed. At 10:30 a.m. ICE train 884 left Hanover Station for Hamburg with a total of 14 coaches, including 2 power cars and 12 passenger cars carrying 287 passengers and 8 crew members. Leaving Hanover Station, everything was completely normal. And in coach number 1, George Dittmann was traveling with his family, having a wonderful and peaceful journey. But a few minutes later, something suddenly struck the floor of the train. And in the very next moment, a sharp steel component tore through the floor and shot up directly between 2 passenger seats, which was actually a large fragment of the wheel itself. Seeing this, George and his family immediately panicked, feeling as if the ground had slipped right from beneath their feet. With the sheer speed that the metal burst through, had it been slightly to the left or right, his family would not have survived. He immediately sent his wife and kids to the adjacent compartment and went looking for the conductor, who was in the 3rd coach at that time. George explained everything to him, but according to company policy, the conductor could not stop the train until he had seen the issue with his own eyes. So both of them started walking towards the 1st coach. The train was still racing at 124 miles per hour, and the dangerous vibrations were slowly increasing. By the time the conductor and George reached the 1st coach, the train had already traveled nearly 2 miles further, and it was now about to pass through a dangerous section where the tracks split. A broken piece of the wheel was still hanging under the train, heavily scraping against the steel tracks, and when the train crossed the 1st section point, the tire part fell down and struck the track lever. At that exact moment, something disastrous happened and the track switch changed, meaning the 1st and 2nd coaches of the train were on one track, but the 3rd coach veered onto the completely other track, sending the front and rear in completely different directions. The heavy body of the train forcefully twisted, and coach number 3 crashed straight into a concrete pillar of a bridge, destroying half of the structure in a horrific collision. Coach number 4 managed to avoid the collapsing bridge, but slammed hard into the embankment, crushing 3 railway workers instantly. Coaches number 5 and 6 were buried under 300 tons of concrete from the falling bridge, and the height of those 2 coaches was later reduced to just 6 inches. Yes, only 6 inches of space was left. The remaining coaches, coming from behind, kept crashing into each other at full speed, folding up violently just like pieces of paper. Only the first 2 coaches, where George and his family were survived, and the front locomotive came to a halt nearly 2 miles ahead at the exact moment coach number 3 hit the bridge. The engineer and driver definitely felt a heavy jolt, but they were completely unaware of the absolute apocalypse unfolding right behind them. Where this catastrophic accident took place, there was a small town named Eschede, and when the locals heard the terrifying sound of the explosion, everyone quickly ran to the horrific scene. The sight before them was something they would probably never forget for the rest of their lives. Seeing mangled coaches and pieces of twisted metal and raging fire, and hearing the painful screams of trapped people. Some people were trapped under the heavy rubble of the bridge, while others were painfully stuck inside their crushed seats, and the pressure-proof windows were so incredibly strong that breaking them was almost impossible. Rescue workers had to call in heavy machinery immediately, but even then, it took several hours just to reach the first trapped victims. More than 1,000 rescue workers rushed to the accident site as ambulances and the military and doctors all joined forces. There was a medical conference happening very nearby, and 40 doctors from there immediately rushed to the site as well, but by then it was sadly all over, as a total of 101 people died in this massive tragedy. 88 people were found in critically injured conditions, and around 100 people suffered various minor injuries. The German high-speed trains, which were once considered the safest trains in the world, had this impression completely shattered, shocking not only Germany, but also people in France and Italy and Japan, who heavily used high-speed train networks. When investigators carefully analyzed the entire accident site, at first it seemed as if a car had somehow gotten onto the tracks, but when they saw the piece of the wheel that had pierced through the floor of coach number 1, everything slowly started to become very clear. When the maintenance logs were thoroughly checked, it was discovered that a flat spot issue had been reported in that exact same train wheel before, and that too 8 different times, but it still was not replaced. Machines designed to easily detect cracks were also readily available, but visual inspections were still being carried out using just basic flashlights because the company brushed it off by claiming that those machines gave false alarms. In 1992, a German research organization named Fraunhofer had even issued a strict warning that resilient wheels could be dangerous on high-speed trains. And in 1997, the Hanover Tram Company had issued a strong warning as well, but both of these vital warnings were completely ignored. Engineers later explained that these tires rotated 500,000 times every single day at extremely high speeds, and with every single rotation, the steel tire would compress slightly and then expand again. This led to the dangerous formation of fatigue cracks that kept growing day by day, and because rubber was placed right in the middle, the vibrations were absorbed, so nobody even realized that the wheels were actually cracking. And then finally, on June 3rd, 1998, just one broken wheel caused the deadliest high-speed train accident in the entire world. After this tragedy, the wheels of all high-speed trains were replaced back to the monoblock design, and all bridges near junction points were relocated so that an accident like this could never happen again. Following this incident, Germany completely re-evaluated its entire national rail system, and the pressure-proof windows were safely replaced so that if a rescue was ever needed in the future, the windows could be easily broken to pull out trapped people. Even today, the Eschede disaster is taught as a primary case study in all of Germany's railway training centers. It is true that monoblock wheels have higher maintenance costs and take more time to fix, but because they are cast as one solid piece, they at least do not break at high speeds, and any vibrations serve as an early warning signal that the wheels critically need balancing. Hopefully, you will thoroughly like and share this video, and thank you so much for your loving and kind comments. See you very soon in the next amazing video.